The pressure to lead for better or worse. Who or what will guide your future? Leaders that may bring a my way or the highway attitude, but are missing the bigger picture. The possibility for empathetic listening and feeling heard or not, provocation, and the potential to meet new people. These are all pressures and questions that this cycle of the Human Design Weather for August 5th to 11th, 2025 will bring. Well, hello there. I'm Margo Fraser, your guide through the cosmic weather. As a certified human design professional and intuitive coach, I'm on a mission to help you know, live, and love the magic of your true nature. So let's get on with this podcast, this edition of Human Design Weather or Not. With this cycle, we begin quarter 3 of the human design calendar. We leave the quarter of civilization, which emphasized bringing things into form. And now we're entering the quarter of duality, purpose fulfilled through bonding. So lots about relationships here. And we'll be in this quarter, of course, for the next 3 months. And it brings a background energy around our relationships and dealing with the nature of duality. We have both the Sun and Earth position sitting in the G center, the diamond in the center of the chart. That's about love, identity, and direction in life. And direction is the emphasis here. We always start with the Sun-Earth positions because they account for about 70% of the conditioning pressure that's coming through. This cycle begins August 5th at 4:01 a.m., going until August 11th at 12:53 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Universal time coordinates, it's coming in August 5th at 10:01 a.m., going until August 11th at 6:53 a.m. So remember to convert that to your own time zone so you know when it starts and ends for you. We have the Sun moving into Gate 7, the trait of the role of the self. Gate 7 is part of the collective logic circuitry that's all about sharing the patterns to carry us into the future. Ultimately, it's in the service of humanity. Now, there are different roles that we have in how we express out to the collective and how we guide. Even if you don't have this trait in your own design, the role is still baked into you per se, the role that you have naturally. It's through your profile, the lines of your Sun Earth. It may be by being an authority. It may be democratically. It may be as an anarchist that tears down what isn't working. Or as the abdicator that recognizes when support is clearly no longer there and it's time to step back. It could be as the general who steps in to lead when there's a crisis, or the administrator that can recognize the role that others should have. As this cycle progresses, we're going to click through all those different roles. The keynote for this trait says the point of convergence. By design, the need for leadership to guide and order society. So in any area of life, there are those that guide and put in order, and those that are guided and follow the pattern. And this is the dynamic. Since there's no ultimate perfection, no one perfect way, there does come a point at which a pattern that did work starts to fail, or simply another way, another method, another pattern comes along that's better. It will likely take different leaders and a different ordering of things. So that's just the natural way that things happen, right? We tend to see leadership start and eventually come to an end, and then another leader steps in. So when we look at leadership, for example, is it better to have a centralized structure for an organization, or one that's more distributed, or some kind of hybrid? The potential opportunities this trait brings is to attune to the future and what the next steps are for what you want to create in your life. What old ways need to be let go of to create that future? Who are those that support you and you can guide? Whose guidance could you benefit from? Are there current leaders or guides that you're following that you're now recognizing are actually not aligned for you? These are all things to contemplate over this particular cycle. The caution is, well, yeah, it's so important to use your strategy and authority. If someone's telling you they have the way forward, it may sound good, and there could be this tendency to jump in from your not self mind, but it's your strategy and authority that will tell you if it's actually aligned for you. Similarly, it could be someone or an organization saying that there are certain ways of things that have to go now. Maybe, but is it correct for you to let go of that? All right. Gate 7 is being grounded in the Earth's position. Gate 13, activating the trait of the listener. This is part of the collective abstract circuitry that shares the lessons and the wisdom of experience and what's been taken in so that we don't have to start from scratch each time. The direction here is the direction from the past. What have you learned? Gate 13 is rooted in empathetic listening to take in that wisdom and secrets from others. It collects reflections of the past, and it's part of our cellular memory circuitry. This is where we take in the information and stories from the collective in whatever form that takes. Its keynote says, universal ideas and values in an ordered framework which inspires humanistic cooperation. We can be inspired in the present by history, and it gives us a sense of where we've come from. We're exchanging what we remember, and we have certain times of year that give us a framework for that reflection, right? New Year's, we're often inspired to contemplate the year gone by. Remembrance or Veterans Day, we tend to think about those who sacrificed before us. Labor Day, we might be thinking about the work that we're doing. Independence Days, we may be thinking about how that occurred and how we can have greater levels of freedom in our life. The potential opportunities this frequency brings are to listen to the wisdom and perhaps even secrets of others that can benefit you in the future and sharing from your experiences. The polarities can always be there too, so not wanting to listen may play out here as well. The caution is that you do need to take time to process what you take in so that the wisdom can be gathered, that it's not just at the surface, right? You can go into the depths of things and gather that wisdom and those deeper lessons and be able to express it out articulately and cohesively. If you take something in and just turn around and blurt out what you've taken in, there's often not a whole lot of wisdom in that. All right. We have such fast ways to circulate information and misinformation these days that you may put something out there where if you haven't had that time for reflection, if you've moved too fast, you might find that, it actually wasn't the whole picture, or you miss out on that deeper wisdom that could have been available. Remember that this is in the experiential circuitry here. So these aren't about facts that have been experimented with and tested. It's about beliefs. You may also find that you're more prone to people fatigue in this cycle. You can only take it and listen for so long, and then it's okay. That's enough. I need to take a break from listening and taking in from others and have some time for myself. Who and what are your information and wisdom sources? This is something to attune to in this cycle. Is there actually value in what you're taking in? Or are you getting caught up in taking in things that then just take you off track from who and what you are as an individual and what you want to create in your life? When we look at these Sun-Earth positions together, you might find from what you've taken in through your experience and learning from others that there are patterns emerging that you can then use to lead and guide others. Or you may jump into leading and guiding from information that's not fully processed, taking you and others off track. Okay, let's move into our channels now. A reminder that when the transit field creates a channel, everyone that doesn't already have it in their chart is receiving activation of the related traits and qualities. So it has a large impact worldwide. We have one medium-term channel and then a few moon-related channels. So let's look at the medium-term channel first. That's the one that's going to have the largest impact. It's going to be with us for the full cycle. And it's a really strong channel because we have the sun sitting in that gate 7 position we talked about, connecting with its electromagnetic gate 31 in the throat center. That's being activated by Mercury. When we have Mercury associated with communication, activating a throat gate, we know it's going to be a talkative cycle. There's going to be extra pressure there to express. Usually Mercury's only activating a trait for a few days, but it's in retrograde and then it's going to go direct while in that gate 31. So it's going to end up activating this trait for almost 16 days. Very unusual for Mercury to be in a trait for that long. Together, when we put the sun position and Mercury's position together, it creates the channel of the Alpha, a design of leadership for good or bad. This is collective logic, once again, sharing the patterns, the formula, the steps to carry us into the future, looking for those things that are reliable and stable. If I do A, B, and C, I'm consistently and reliably going to get X result. This is really about democratic leadership here, leaders that have the support of those they're leading. It's a place where there's the possibility for you to express the trends and the patterns that could help humanity move towards a better future. You may see patterns that could help you or those around you. The opportunity it brings is to express leadership qualities. Now, this doesn't have to be formal. It could be guiding others in some way. You might find it's easier to walk someone through the steps of how to do something, right? Following that pattern, for example, in a way that's clear and understandable. If you have to do a presentation where you're stepping others through a process or something like that, this could be a really helpful cycle. The caution is that any guidance or leadership you provide needs to be supported. It needs to be invited. It can't just be forced to be accepted. And if the patterns you think work haven't actually been experimented with enough to be reliable, you could lead others or others could lead you down a path that isn't of value and towards a worse instead of a better future. Collectively, we're likely to hear from those that are telling us the patterns and the trends they're seeing. This is an influential leadership channel. But the question is, do they really have the facts? There may be opportunities to see which leaders are really being of service to humanity and which are not. Okay, we've got 3 channels being created by the transit of the moon, which means they're just tasters. The moon only stays in a gate for 10 to 11 hours, give or take. So yeah, it's just a little sampler. So I'll just go through these quickly. The first starts on August 1st at 7:42 a.m., going until 6:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC, that's coming in August 5th at 1:42 p.m., going until August 6th at 12:30 a.m. The moon is moving into gate 10, the trait of the behavior of the self. This is also the trait of self-love. Once again, we're in the G center, and it's connecting with Uranus position, gate 20, the trait of contemplation and the now in the throat center. Together, they create the channel of awakening, a design of commitment to higher principles, part of the individual circuitry. that always wants to bring through mutation, something new through acoustic knowings in the now. In this case, it can be quite self-empowering. This channel is about expressing self-love and acceptance of yourself, or self-hate and non-acceptance of yourself in the now. This is the identity of the G center connecting directly to the throat. So with this channel, if you're criticized, it could feel like who you are is being criticized. Your very identity is being criticized. So it can be quite sensitive to criticism here, especially if you're speaking your truth from yourself. There can be a pressure to want to be recognized, which can bring attention-seeking behavior with this activation. This channel operates best when you're invited to speak and, of course, following your strategy and authority. Next up, coming in on August 9th at 3:12 p.m., going until August 10th at 1:04 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC, it's starting August 9th at 9:12 p.m., going until August 10th at 7:04 a.m. The moon's moving into gate 30, the trait of recognition of feelings in the solar plexus, emotional center. That's connecting with gate 41, the trait of contraction and decrease in the root center. Together, they create the channel of recognition, a design of focused energy. This is part of the abstract experiential circuitry and brings the opportunity to get clarity from all the experiences that you might dream about having, you might be fantasizing about having in the future, to narrow those down to the one that you truly desire. What is that true yearning? The caution here is that there can be no expectations, and there can only be ultimately one experience that you're going through at a time. So you have to be patient in allowing that clarity of which is the one to come through. Then the moon's going to immediately click right into another channel. So starting on August 10th at 1:04 a.m., going until 10:52 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC, August 10th at 7:04 a.m., going until 4:52 p.m. The moon's going to click now into gate 55, the trait of spirit in the emotional center, connecting with Jupiter's position, gate 39, the trait of the provocateur in the root center. Together, they create the channel of emoting, a design of moodiness. This is another one in the individual circuitry. It wants to bring through that mutation. It brings the pressure to find your spirit, your passion, and to gain an awareness of who or what fills your cup, so to speak, and who or what doesn't. This can bring outbursts of emotion that come through this channel, whether high or low. And any of the individual circuitry can drop into melancholy. So that's always something to be aware of as well. If that occurs, you want to channel it into something creative as best you can, and listening to music that you're in the mood for can be helpful as well. And that brings us to our long-term transits, where we have some changes. The long-term transits are created by the outer planets and the nodes of the moon. They're with us for longer periods of time, years in some cases. So your not self mind could start to think that they're part of you, even when it's not actually something that's in your design. And then when it goes away eventually, wow, that can create some confusion in your being. We do have some line changes this cycle that are going to shift the gate frequency. So let's take a look at that. The north and south nodes of the moon are sitting in gates 22, the gate of grace or disgrace, and in the emotional center, and the gate of oppression and realization in the ajna center. So two awareness center here. The emotional center is also a motor. And we're going to see a shift in the lines for these traits on August 5th into line 2. Gate 22 that individual trait of grace or disgrace. It brings attentive listening or not, and openness or closeness to social interaction is moving into line 2, which is called charm school. It has a developmental theme, something that develops over time that says the belief that style can mask nature. Line 2 is a line of projection. So there's a projection out from within of a frequency that's here to bring through mutation. But line 2s, we often say that they're kind of a paper tiger. They might be able to fulfill on that projection or not. So here it brings this way of being charming that can really empower others to be attentive. It pulls in that attentiveness. And yet, when it comes your turn to talk, for example, if this is you projecting it out, you might not actually have much to say. That expression could shift, ultimately, how we interact and relate to each other, but that's not necessarily going to be there in this line too. Its exaltation says the ability to successfully delude oneself and others, the possibility to attract others with an emotional style. So what this means is that there's going to be this sense of bringing out the attentiveness in others, but often the actual discussion is more at a surface level. When things go deeper, there may not be much to say. There's not a lot necessarily of depth there, but there's still this valuable ability to empower openness and intentiveness in others. This is a really nice frequency to have in the air, so to speak, if you're meeting strangers. It helps to create this opening for socializing. And then perhaps at another time when we have a different frequency, there can be going into a greater depth. But it does definitely open doors to creating social interaction. The detriment says the legalization of form over substance, where the style is energized at the expense of awareness. For me, this is a great reminder that the emotional center is both a motor and an awareness center, and that often the motor drowns out the possible awareness. So this is where someone could really be attracting your attention, right? Let's say they're projecting out this charm school frequency, and it kind of pulls your attention. Oh, wow, look at them, but I don't really want to talk to them. Right? So it actually closes off socially. So here we have an environment where there can be this real attentiveness to each other and openness to socializing, even though the substance of the talk or this discussion itself will likely be more superficial. Again, though, it can open up opportunities to meet new people. Or, since we often see the detriments play out in the collective, this environment where people are getting the attention of each other, but then closing off to interaction. Gate 47, the collective abstract trait of realization and oppression in the Ajna Center in line 2 is called ambition. Its exaltation says the ambition and drive to overcome personal oppression in order to achieve security. Realizing to be busy is mentally healthy. If this trait impacts you personally, it's a frequency that could have you being really bothered when you can't make sense of something. It's like, I gotta get my mind off of this. The key really is to be busy and let that making sense just run in the background. Clarity will come in time. Line 2 is also the line of the natural. It'll come through when it comes through. The detriment says an indecisiveness in times of personal oppression, that's trying to make sense, whether to apply intelligence to recovery or accept its weight to take advantage of other prevailing conditions that may only be temporary. The inability to sense when and which activity is healthy. So here there can be this back and forth mentally of, do I really put my attention on making sense? Or do I do something to get my mind off of it? Here's the thing. Once again, this is not the first line that's introspective and investigative that's going to delve into all the details of making sense. That's not going to be successful for line 2. And this is the line of the natural. It'll come when it comes. But again, in the detriment, there can be this real indecisiveness there. So here we have this environment that's going to be busy, being busy in the present so that you don't have to deal with trying to make sense of the past. That's what the pressure is going to bring. The question is what you're being busy with actually of value? You've got to follow your strategy and authority to guide you there. Jupiter, with its expansiveness, is in gate 39, the trait of provocation and obstruction. On August 3rd, it moved into line 4, called temperance. So that's where it's going to be at the start of this cycle. That's got a developmental theme that says careful evaluation and assessment before taking action. We've moved into the upper trigram now. So we went through 1, 2, 3. Now we've moved to 4, start of the upper trigram. So the upper trigram understands that there are others that are going to be impacted by the provocation that comes through. Where is the other in their emotional wave? That's what's on the other end of this. It's pointing at the emotional center. And what is the right time to provoke them? This is something that you learn here with maturity and testing. The exaltation says the values of feelings and instincts in establishing the proper timing, the energy to provoke at exactly the right time. So feelings and instincts, those have to do with the collective and the tribal circuitry. And this is an individual trait. It's really a reminder that the individual is ultimately here to impact the collective and the tribe. The detriment says the faulty belief that willpower alone can overcome any obstacle regardless of circumstances. The energy to provoke that ignores circumstances. Whenever you see a description that refers to willpower, it's talking about the ego. The ego's getting in the way. And the ego wants to provoke when it feels like provoking, rather than just allowing the mechanical ability of this trait to operate with its right timing. If you're not provoking according to the correct timing, there's going to be a lot of opposition. And the kind of mood that's being provoked is not going to be necessarily fun to deal with. It's like telling someone you really need some quiet time to study. And they go outside and rev up the leaf blower right outside your window. Right? Now, can you tell that's something that would provoke me? Mm-hmm. All right. Well, gate 39 is ultimately about provoking the emotional spirit of the other, that gate 55 frequency. On August 8th, this trait will move into line 5, called single-mindedness. It also has a developmental theme that says the rare ability not to overcome, but to bypass obstacles. Obstacles in this trait are the reaction that the other has to the provocation and whatever has to be dealt with out of that. Now, the fifth line is the line that gets projected onto. Second line's projecting out, the fifth line's being projected onto. And it's being projected onto that it's provocative, that it's single-minded. So what's the point in even trying to interact with them? It's better just to stay out of the way. Which is really too bad, because if no one's interacting, you can't provoke to find the correct spirits for you out there. And the correct spirits are the one that can't be provoked by your provocation, ironically. But this is how obstacles can just be bypassed. There's a bypassing of the reaction of the other to the provocation because there was no interaction. It's a really interesting phenomena in society that we've kind of demonized, per se, provocation. It's seen as a negative trait and something that's unnecessary. You don't have to, you don't have to keep nagging, you don't have to keep pushing, you don't have to keep poking me. All right. The exaltation here says the imagination to establish new patterns that make the obstacles irrelevant. The imaginative energy to provoke through bypassing obstacles. So it's projected onto this trait that they're provocative. I'm not going to deal with them in the usual way. It's just better to avoid them. The detriment says simple hard-headedness. Though less exalted, it can often result in success and gather support by its very determination, the energy to provoke through hard-headedness. So here are the provocations projected on to this trait again. Well, it's just best to accept the mood that they're in and just go along with it. So again, neither of these great because the spirit's never provoked. It's either avoided totally in one way or another, just totally avoided, or I'm just going to accept it, even though I might not like it, and just go along with it. Provocation's about provoking to find the spirit and to find the spirits that are not actually provoked. Once again, those are the ones that are correct for you. But if the provoking process isn't allowed, we never get the correct spirit. We don't ever trigger the right spirit or the correct spirit for us in the moment. So what Jupiter is likely to expand here is the avoidance of provocation and accepting the mood that's present just to avoid conflict. And with that 22 in the field, just be charming and superficial. All right. Saturn and Neptune continue to sit in gate 25. They're both together in line 4 now, which is called survival, and says the nature of true innocence can be maintained regardless of circumstances. The spiritual warrior. No detriment to this line. Neptune can veil or unveil. It can also dissolve. So it may help dissolve those ways of being within you that are not true to your nature. It could also veil the nature of true innocence. Both can play out. Saturn's impact may be to bring discipline to this ability to maintain innocence regardless of circumstances, or it could bring consequences if you don't. Can you sit within the void of the unknown? That's also what gate 25 represents. And be present to what is. In the collective, we may see disciplined approaches that dissolve illusions that have been in place, and there can be consequences that arise out of that. Uranus, with its unusualness, its rebellion and revolutionary nature, is in gate 20, another individual trait in the throat center. This is the trait of contemplation and the now. It's a very existential gate with the voice of I am now. On August 5th, it'll move into line 2 called the dogmatist, with a developmental theme that says restrictive and intentionally limited understanding. So just for clarity here, a dogmatist is a person who expresses their opinions in a very strong and inflexible way, as if they are undeniable truths, and they'll be very resistant to considering alternative perspectives. Second lines project out once again, so it's projecting out that I know I am now, whether it does or not. Second lines always have a selectivity built into them. So what I know in the now is going to be limited in bandwidth. This trait doesn't see everything that's there in the now, but there will be this expression of their point of view in a very dogmatic way. This is how it is. The exaltation says the limitation, if personal and exclusive, is less negative through ascetic withdrawal, a restrictive awareness in the now. So this is a tendency to withdraw when others try to expose them to what is in the periphery, what is outside of that limited view. There'll be a tendency to want to be around those who will pay attention to their view or to your view. The detriment says the power to lead others down a narrow path. The gift through expression of leading others down a narrow and restrictive path. Gate 20 does carry the possibility to lead people in their survival and well-being process. But here it's going to be a very specific path. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. These are going to be specialists. If you want to learn in a specialty area, this is exactly what you want, right? You want someone who's a specialist to take you down that path and teach you what they know. On the other hand, especially if they lack the wisdom of maturity, this is very much I know what's good for you right now, more than you do. And maybe they do or maybe they don't. There's kind of this my way or the highway quality here. Personally, Uranus may bring an unusual perspective to you that may be narrow, and you may find yourself expressing that. Just be aware that you're not likely seeing the full picture. If you're in a specialty area, you may really find that you can lead in an unusual or even revolutionary way within that area. Collectively, Uranus can be sidetracking. So we may get people who are sidetracked down a narrow path, following someone's dogma that's not actually correct for them. There may be rebellious, dogmatic perspectives that are expressed that some grab onto for good or for bad. Pluto, sitting in that gate 41 in the root center, the trait of contraction and decrease, part of the abstract experiential circuitry. This is the gate, the trait of daydreaming and fantasizing. We saw it in one of our channels, all about what's that next experience you want to have. Very innocent at this stage. It's the pressure to start a new experience, and it's sitting in line 1 called reasonableness. The potential opportunity it brings, if correct for you, is to engage your imagination in what you would like to create and what you'd like to experience. At the same time, it will eventually need to be narrowed down. The caution here is that not every fantasy is meant to be brought into reality. So watch that you're not setting expectations around that. What's really reasonable to bring into fruition? Because this is a retrograde, we have Pluto retrograding right now. It's gone through line 1 already, went into line 2, and now it's come back. So it may bring another look at what's really reasonable. Perhaps something that you thought was reasonable turned out not to be. And there's an opportunity now to redirect that energy. In the collective, 41 can bring a contraction and a decrease of resources. And that fantasy and imagination can find ways to navigate through that. So we have still overall a strong individual leaning in the long-term transits, which can always bring this don't interfere with me kind of vibe to it. The real area of focus this cycle is the G center, where we have the Sun and Earth in 2 of the directional gates, and Saturn, Neptune, and Mars activating love gates. Mars is in gate 46 for the full cycle, activating the trait of determination of the self and love of the body vessel. Because we have that channel of the alpha, that 731, active for the full cycle, it means everyone will have their G center and throat activated. You normally have those undefined in your chart. Well, they're going to be activated for this full cycle. And so we all will have access to the frequencies of these traits in the G center, as well as the 31 and Uranus position in gate 20 in the throat center. So very impactful for those of you that are normally undefined with the G center and the throat center. So I could tie the keynotes for that group of traits in the G and throat center together as bringing a quality of leading in a very specific way through the void of the unknown, using wisdom of the past, and being very determined in that, in a way that expresses the spiritual warrior. We may see a standing up for what one really believes in and clearly being able to articulate the patterns that they see. Or another way these could be woven together, more in the malevolent way, is this fiery rhetoric with an egoic undertone where others presume to know what's best for you and are leading in a way that's, yes, determined, but immature, impulsive, and contrived, and are unwilling to take time to process the lessons along the way. Once Jupiter moves into line 5 and that trait of provocation on the 8th, we may also see an avoidance, or what I would call a lower level acceptance of the frequency of provocation out there. People trying to, they're just provocative. That may not serve the true spirit at either the personal level for you or the collective spirit of humanity. it's a good time then to really notice if you're in that avoiding or accepting, well, it is what it is. I'm not going to get caught up in that. I'm just going to go along to get along. It's a great time to work on shifting any negative perceptions about the nature of provocation and understanding how necessary it is to bring out the true emotional spirit so that we can find those who are correct for us in any moment. Who are those people that fill our cup, so to speak? Remember, for any of these traits, if you don't have them in your own design, it's just pressure from the transit field. You can observe it playing out around you. You can learn from it. But whether there's actually something for you to do with it is according to your own strategy and authority. So don't let it run you. This brings us to the end of the cosmic weather for this cycle. If you want to run your own chart, you can go to jovianarchive.com. If you're new to human design and you just want to understand the basics of the chart, the body graph, what's the black and the red about, the different geometric shapes, a little bit of background on the system, you're welcome to grab my free Human Design Basics mini course. It's at margogfraser.com/human-design. All right. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would be very grateful if you could give the episode a like and consider subscribing. Okay. So we've got this pressure to lead, to guide from your lessons learned, from your wisdom, but just watch that it's actually invited and that your own strategy and authority are giving you a yes. Logic also supports any planning that you need to do. So great cycle for that. All right. Have an awesome cycle, and may you know, love, and live the magic of your true nature. Until next time, bye for now.